Welcome to the fourth video on section 4 of Hume's An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding. In the last video, we saw how Hume argued for the first step of his skeptical argument that all of our conclusions concerning matters of fact are not founded on reason. And what's left to prove is that all conclusions concerning cause and effect are based on experience. And that's what we'll be doing in this video. And then we'll be turning to how all conclusions from experience are not founded on reason. Okay. Moving down on the page here. So what Hume turns to next is showing that our immediate knowledge of matters of fact, which we've now seen are based on the principle of association of cause and effect, are not based on reason or reasoning a priori. They're not a relation of ideas, but are based on experience. So why is knowledge about cause and effect not based on a priori reasoning about relations between ideas? Well, there are two parts to showing this. First, why isn't the relation between cause and effect intuitive? Let's look at the passage. So Hume presents this on page 17. So he says, I shall venture to affirm as a general proposition, which admits of no exception, that the knowledge of this relation is not in any instance attained by reasonings a priori. That is, all of our knowledge concerning the relation of cause and effect is not a relation of ideas. Rather, he goes on, he says, but arises entirely from experience when we find that any particular objects are constantly conjoined with each other. Let an object be presented to a man of ever so strong natural reason and abilities. If that object be entirely new to him, he will not be able, by the most acute examination of its sensible qualities, to discover any of its causes or effects. Adam, though his rational faculties be supposed, at the very first entirely perfect, could not have inferred from the fluidity and transparency of water that it would suffocate him, or from the light and warmth of fire that it would consume him. No object ever discovers by the qualities which appear to the senses either the causes which produced it or the effects which will arise from it. Nor can our reason, unassisted by experience, ever draw any inference concerning real existence and matters of fact. So what's the argument here? How is the case of Adam relevant? Well, let's start first with the a priori reasonings. So how do we know that say the fact that water will suffocate you isn't something that you can intuit or know through a relation of ideas? Well, We establish intuitive relations immediately just by examining the ideas, right? By examining 3 and 4 immediately, we see that 3 is less than 4. And when we can intuit a relation between two ideas like this, their contrary is inconceivable. We cannot think the thought corresponding to 4 is less than 3, nor can we think the thought of a square circle. These are contradictory. And so when Hume claims that Adam, though his rational faculties be supposed at the very first entirely perfect, could not have inferred from the fluidity and transparency of water that it would suffocate him, or from the light and warmth of a fire that it would consume him, what's he saying? Well, Adam is the first man, right? Adam is created anew with no experience. And suppose he sees water, right? And from the impression of water, he then gets the idea of water. Just by reflecting on this idea of water, he can't infer that the water will drown him. The idea of water is not intuitively related to the idea of drowning, like how 4 is intuitively related, greater than 3. Why? Well, on page 19, Hume says, in a word, then, every effect is a distinct event from the cause. It could not, therefore, be discovered in the cause, and the first invention or conception of it a priori must be entirely arbitrary. So what's the thought there? Well, the thought is that if an idea of a cause included its idea of its effect within it, then you could infer the idea of the effect merely from the idea of its cause. Right? You could discover the effect just from thinking about the cause. But you can't do this. You can't do this in the case of drowning or in any other case. Before experiencing the water and it's drowning him, Adam could conceive of many things happening, right? For example, it isn't contradictory that the water might make Adam itchy. And we could imagine it having that effect, right? We could imagine Adam plunging his head into the water and becoming covered in hives all over his face. That's conceivable. It's not actual, it doesn't actually happen, but it's conceivable. And that's enough to show that it's not a relation of ideas. Rather, it requires experience. It requires actually sensing and feeling the sensation of drowning. Okay. So it seems like the relation between cause and effect is not merely a relation of ideas. But why think that it's a matter of experience? Well, in order to answer the question why Hume thinks it's a matter of experience, first, we're going to have to see what Hume means by experience, right? So there's a bit of jargon here that we need to figure out what Hume has in mind with this term experience before we can understand why he thinks all knowledge about the cause and effect is based on it. Well, here, going back to Aristotle is going to help. So what Hume means by experience is going to be close to what we saw Aristotle meant by experience all those weeks ago. This is the sense of experience that one finds in job ads when they say experience required. So if you apply for a job at a coffee shop and the ad says experience required, then you must have made coffee many times. You must have had many impressions of first grinding the beans, then tamping them down, etc. as well as all of the accompanying ideas. And so just like how we saw experience back in Aristotle was general, that an experienced barista has made coffee many times and so has had this kind of experience over and over and over again, and so has a kind of general experience, has had these sensations over and over, and so has a general kind of experience. An experienced soldier has fought in many battles, or an experienced doctor has treated many cases, and an experienced farmer has farmed for many years. And in each case, the soldier, the doctor, the farmer has done the thing many times. And so there's a kind of generality to the experience. And so experience is general and requires repetition, repeated past encounters with first the cause, then the effect, for example. And so don't confuse experience with sensation. Or impressions. Right, so impressions or sensation are instances, right? I'm having an impression of the brown table right now, but that's just one instance, whereas experience requires repetition. It requires many experiences, many instances, many sensations, many repeated seemings, many repeated perceptions, many repeated sensings, right? Okay, and so what's Hume's claim when he claims that our knowledge about cause and effect is based on experience? Well, let me turn the page. Well, what he has in mind, right, when he says that all of our inferences, all of our immediate knowledge of matters of fact that are based on cause and effect are based on experience, he means there's a kind of transition, and that this transition, whenever I say form the belief that soon my thirst will be quenched on the basis of drinking water, that is going to depend on past experience. If I don't have that past experience of drinking water, thirst being quenched, drinking water, thirst being quenched, I'm not going to draw this inference when I drink the water now to soon my thirst to be quenched. So experience, he thinks, is going to be required for drawing this inference. Okay. In the next video, we'll turn to the third part of Hume's argument.